I'm really excited. We have a great guest today, Miles Williams, who's been someone who's helped me a lot with traffic problems in District 8 and has helped the city. Well, Miles, you are a principal of with Sigma Corporation, which is an local engineering firm. You've worked a lot of the city projects. One of the projects that my constituents are really concerned with is Jones Creek. I understand that you're the consulting engineer on that project.
That's correct. We were the lead design engineer for that project for the city parish and through the DOTD, and we also were contracted to help oversee the construction.
That's fantastic. Now, Miles, how long ago does Jones Creek? Someone told me that they've been working on this for the past 20 years. Is that true?
Well, to try and make a long story short, we were engaged as the design engineer over 10 years ago.
Uh-huh.
However, it had some starts and stops to it. It involved federal funding along with state funding and city parish funding, so that we had an environmental process that we had to go through to meet the federal requirements. We also had a separate contract that was led about 3 years ago for the clearing and grubbing that made room to do all the utility relocations, which was a wise thing to do at the time so that utilities are out the way. And then there was some issues the first time DOTD bid the project. They had to reject all the bids and then rebid it. So the answer is yes, it's taken a very long time, but we are now seeing the light at the end of the tunnel.
And this is a unique project because it's not just a pure road project, it's both road and sewer.
That's correct. That's correct. Inside about 2/3 of the length of Jones Creek Road, there is an existing force main sanitary sewer. As you're well aware, and I think most of the folks in your district are aware, we are also going through a parish-wide major sewer upgrade that requires that sewer line down Jones Creek Road get upgraded to, it's going from a 30-inch force main to a 36-inch force main. Of the approximately $18 million in construction costs for the project, about 3 or 4 million of that is this sewer improvement. So it is a sewer improvement inside of a roadway improvement.
Now, my understanding is that Jones Creek is going to be a 5-lane road with the fifth, which is I guess referred to as continual left-hand turn lane.
That's correct. It's and also will have curbs, subsurface drainage, 4-foot sidewalks on both sides, and it also has a 5-foot wide kind of shoulder area. So it's a little bit wider than the standard 5-lane road. And then there'll be additional turn lanes at all the major intersections, and we'll be replacing all the signals with new mast arm signals. It should be a really, really important improvement, for that area.
Yeah, I think I'm really excited about it. I'm excited about having the sidewalks because they've never had sidewalks in that area before. There's so many residential area in that. So, I mean, walkability I think is key, both for people who live in Shenandoah, people who live in Hickory Ridge. And so I think that's going to really add to that area once it is completed.
Right, and they'll, there's so many businesses along there that it was important to us to keep that access, and the 5-lane section versus a boulevard. There was so many driveways that it said, why don't we make sure that the access is allowed to everywhere, and then we have the separate sidewalks to get the mobility for everyone.
Well, one thing that I'm glad about, Miles, is that you and I are friends, but you're kind of my secret cabinet that anytime I have a traffic issue, I'll talk to you about. And with you being the consulting engineers, that we're able to talk, and we know when the lane, when they're going to be closing, so we can kind of communicate that to the businesses, because there are a lot of small businesses out there, and I felt that it is vital to have them know what's going on so they can inform their customers so it doesn't hurt their businesses.
Right. Well, I appreciate that, Councilman. Your district is our district. Our office is right out that way. I have several employees that live in your district. We've completed several projects. George O'Neill, the north extension of Jones Creek Road, the 4-lane there. We're heavily invested in your district and our community, and it's really great to work with you.
Miles, with you Yeah, I didn't even mention that you do teach at LSU engineering.
Yes, I do.
And one thing that you and I have talked about privately is that, we don't need to have political decisions made. We need to have decisions for our roads that are based on data. Are we moving more towards that direction, that these projects are being data driven versus versus political driven?
I, I think things are moving very much in that direction. That all the alternatives that are being generated for the I-10 project, they are going to be based on good traffic analysis. People want something to be done. They want something to be done in a reasonable fashion. I'll use as an example the Green Light Plan, which has
Right.
been a very successful
Absolutely.
program
Mhm.
for East Baton Rouge Parish. And I'll give the administration credit, I'll give the council
mayor,
credit.
The mayor has done a phenomenal job with the Green Light program.
That program was generated from a set of internal meetings of regional transportation planners and engineers, and I was included in on that. It was 6 months before Katrina. It was early 2005. That whole plan was developed from real engineering position, a planning position, and then it was vetted through the public very well by the administration. That's a good example of how to go about real regional transportation improvements. We're sitting here today talking about the struggles that we have transportation-wise. Just think where our community would be if we hadn't implemented that plan.
I know. I mean, it was extremely visionary on behalf of our mayor at the time, and because I said, 6 months later we get hit with Katrina. The growth expectations of Baton Rouge almost doubled
Right.
overnight, and I think everyone that lives in Baton Rouge, they can remember Baton Rouge before Katrina and after Katrina, because of the roads and because how used to be we have little bypasses that we knew that were
Right.
and now it's like everything is just a standstill with it. But yeah, I do believe that Baton Rouge will never reach its full potential until we really start getting the traffic moving, and that is has caused really economic. There was a study I think that came out just recently. I think they said that Baton Rouge traffic costs the average motorist like $1,200 a year just with sitting time
Right.
time in the car,
Right.
just the expenses involved in it. So I mean,
It's an incredible burden to our community. It really is. It's
Yeah.
it's hard at from an engineering standpoint, we identify that lost hours in congestion and put a dollar figure to it. It makes sense, and it's $1,200 is a lot of money.
yeah, it is.
And that's part of the benefit cost analysis when we're doing projects like I-10. We're gonna say how much, quote, soft money is going to be saved by the community when we alleviate that congestion. Still, the funding mechanisms are really going to be
Oh, absolutely.
the hitch points when it comes time to really implementing some of these big projects.
Right, because I mean, most of these projects, I believe, is something like 85% federally funded, and then you have a 15% or 20% local component.
That's correct. Somewhere in that range, depending on what program it falls under the federal government. If you can get the federal government to commit to that program.
Yeah. Now, I went to the I-10 study community meeting on Monday. Y'all were showing. I guess it was just kind of a proposal of additional lanes starting. I guess a little bit by college and then going through.
That's correct. What we did for discussion purposes was create a base concept. This is the most basic alternative that we might consider, which would include adding one lane in both directions, through the limits of the project, excluding the main Mississippi River Bridge. Because the main truss, to widen the main truss from 6 lanes to 8 lanes, for example, is very cost prohibitive.
Yeah, it must be like putting another bridge.
That's
Yeah.
correct. In fact, as we develop alternatives going through the study, we will have some alternative that increases the capacity across the river. Of course, that's going to have high impact and high cost. So what you saw and what the public saw at the at the public meeting in which they saw last night in West Baton Rouge Parish, and then the third and final one is tomorrow night at the Crown Plaza from 6 to 8 p.m., was a base concept to start the discussion of what are the possibilities that could be done inside the corridor.
You know, the one thing that my takeaway from the meeting was that Baton Rouge does have a transportation crisis, and that we're not just looking at one idea. That, you know, we have to go a lot of, you know, it's basically all of the above. And if Baton Rouge is to grow, if Baton Rouge is, you know, have any type of quality of life, this is something we have to work. And these projects take such a long time. Like we were just saying, Jones Creek took almost 20 years.
Right.
But, you know, if we start today, that 20, but if we wait 5 years, then it's 20 years from
right.
that. You know, and I think the thing is that we have to all have long-term, you know,
That's
views.
right. That's right.
Miles, it's been a real pleasure to have you, you know, on the traffic report, and really, you know, appreciate everything that you do, you know, specifically for District 8, for our city on there. This is Buddy Amoroso, and keeping District 8 great.